Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers. We are honored to have gathered you today, and we are very happy that you spend time with us on this very important subject matter in the German Pavilion today at COP28. We are discussing the joint work on climate action in agriculture and food systems. I am Monika Fröhler. I'm the CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and you might guess that my boss, Ban Ki-moon, is very, very much still eager to work on the Paris Climate Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. And why is that so? That's definitely so because we are horribly off track with pretty much all of our goals. And indeed, food security lies at the heart of the debate today, but also at the heart of Ban Ki-moon's concern. Because ending hunger, ending malnutrition, and really granting food security is a goal that is by far not fulfilled. Indeed, we have to redouble our efforts and be probably even more laser-sharp focused in our activities that we are undertaking. We do need food systems. They provide, obviously, food security and nutrition. You know, they have three key elements to them. Food security and nutrition, they definitely provide the livelihood for millions of people. And obviously, they can be, if done right, they can be a contributor to a healthy ecosystem. So, having said all this, the climate impacts that we are witnessing currently are hitting smallholder farmers harder than almost any other community, apart from small island states, maybe you might argue, but smallholder farmers are really carrying the brunt of the burden without having contributed anything to it, literally. So this is why we are here. We want to discuss what are the challenges, how do we need to transform our food systems, and what can we do respectively. We have put together an amazing panel that knows a lot about mitigation and adaptation, and we are very happy to call upon them one after the other. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, let us listen to a statement by Ban Ki-moon himself, the former Secretary General of the United Nations.
Dear Federal Minister Özdemir and distinguished speakers at the German Pavilion here at COP28, dear colleagues, it is my great pleasure to address you today virtually at this COP28 side event on climate action in agriculture and food systems. I extend my gratitude to the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture of Germany for partnering with us, the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, in addressing this critical issue. Allow me to highlight one crucial number at this point. It is estimated that almost 600 million people will be chronically undernourished by 2030. Achieving food security by 2030 will therefore be a major challenge. It can only be achieved with the appropriate investments in agricultural research and development benefiting the most vulnerable. Now more than ever, supporting and fortifying the resilience of smallholder farmers, especially women and youth, is imperative. This isn't just crucial for poverty alleviation and equality, but is fundamental in addressing food insecurity and climate impacts on people and societies. As we must accelerate our adaptation and mitigation efforts like never before, I call upon global leaders to support research institutes and networks like CGIAR in fostering innovation to make climate resilient, sustainable agriculture the preferred option for smallholder farmers globally by 2030. I wish you a productive discussion and encourage you to make bold commitments for an equitable and sustainable future for all. Thank you. Danke schön. Shukran jazilan.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we will start our wonderful session here today with opening statements. And the first one that I want to draw upon is actually Claudia Müller. She is representing, of course, as Parliamentary Secretary of State, the Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture. You have vast expertise not only in business administration, transport, maritime industry and tourism, but also particularly in agriculture. And obviously, the German voice here in the German Pavilion is a very prominent one. Please, give us your opening statement.
Thank you so much, and let me add, I also worked in security issues before, so that adds quite well to what we are discussing today. And thank you so much for the introduction and also for the very interesting and kind video, Ban Ki-moon. I'm very happy to be representing the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture today. As you're seeing, I'm not Cem Özdemir. Unfortunately, he was on a very short notice not able to come, so I'm here to represent him and our ministry. And I'm delighted here to sit here with partners from FAO, from the Global Research Alliance on Agriculture, Greenhouse Gases, and especially with someone who represents the group that is essential for all this, the smallholder farmers. So, dear Elizabeth, I'm very happy that we can meet here, and I heard so much wonderful things about you already. Now, agriculture has been discussed under the UNFCCC for some time now, but 2030 is drawing even closer. The Sharm el-Sheikh joint work on implementation of climate action in agriculture and food security is hence a great opportunity to finally ensure food security and hunger and address the vulnerable difficult word, especially if you haven't slept, vulnerabilities that food production systems have in the face of climate change. And seen from a European point of view, there are only 7 more harvests until 2030. So only 7 more harvests to achieve the SDG 2 zero hunger by 2030 and to realize the right to adequate food. But we are not powerless. By acting and with the help of policymakers, farmers, producers, research and science, we can make a difference. And we, that means all of us, that includes the consumer as well. So of course we have to ask us how exactly can we achieve that? And our answer should be twofold. Because we need both short-term response but also long-term answers. Now on short-term, and this is what we are seeing, we need humanitarian assistance wherever possible. And let me add, we also need, and we have seen that especially the last 2 years, secure ways in logistics. We need the access of food products to the markets that is on a short-term basis. However, short-term will do nothing to mitigate climate change. And it will also not really help us to build resilient food systems. So we need to make fundamental changes to bring about long-term improvements. So we must work with the farmers, scientists, researchers, civil societies and so on, and of course the policymakers, to find ways to make production more climate friendly and more climate resilient, and to assist in promoting food sovereignty. And let me, especially from a German point of view, stress that. Because very often when we talk about food security from a Western European point of view, especially with our farmers, they think about increasing their exports. Now this is not what we mean when we say food security. We mean building resilient food systems in all countries. We need equality when it comes to the question of food systems. So I am convinced that we need to look at the ways we produce, process and consume, and to conduct research to better alternatives for the whole process to make it more sustainable. And I had the honor to meet some of your young champions already, and I can tell you, if you have the chance, 3 of them are sitting there, talk to them. They are very inspiring, they have great ideas, and really the questions they are asking themselves are questions we in the North are asking ourselves too. So there's really the basis, the good foundation for cooperation. Now, I see 3 dimensions. So it's food, agriculture and climate. and they all affect each other. So we must see them holistically. And that's something we're working on in Germany by supporting our farmers to invest more into organic crops and organic agriculture and more animal welfare. We have just launched last month a strategy to reach the goal of 30% organic agriculture in Germany by 2030. And then also we have just recently adapted our first Adaptation Act in Germany to give priority to the question of climate adaptation. And we work on that field not only nationally, but internationally with our partners, especially with the African Union. We have just started a new cooperation. I would like to especially acknowledge the work of the Global Research Alliance. We have been supporting that for many years. And when we say working together, especially with the African Union, it's about agroecology, climate resilient practices and seed system. Sustainable forest management is a big part of it. And it's just a few. And we also have bilateral cooperations with countries, for example, New Zealand, to really work on these questions together. Because what we are seeing, the questions we are facing, the challenges are big. But we can face them if we work together, if we take the experience from each other, learn from each other, and enhance our strategies together. That is the way to go forward. And on that note, I am still optimistic that we can reach those goals by 2030, but only if we truly mean working together on a basis that is equal. So thank you.
Thanks a lot for this very inspiring opening statement. We are blessed to have the Deputy Director of FAO with us today, Maria Helena Semedo. She is the representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And you can guess her background is from Cape Verde, but you have really been an inspiration. You were the first female minister way back, like decades ago, and you are someone who has shaped the international agenda on agriculture and on sustainable development quite a bit with your work. So thank you for being with us. Please give us your opening statement right away.
Thank you. Good morning to all. It's a pleasure to be here with the Federal Ministry, State Secretary of Germany, with Elisabeth, my dear sister, and with the Global Alliance, and to talk about something that is deep in my heart. Let me start with what the Secretary of State said, that to achieve the goals, we need to work together. You said that we have 7 harvests to achieve 2030. But FAO projection shows that if you keep business as usual, we'll reach 2030 with the same number of insecure people that we had in 2015. And I think it will be a global failure for all of us. What we committed, we were not able to reach. And if you look and we link the food, the SDG 2, the food system, the food security with the climate goals, I think is even worse. Then what we are doing in FAO, we started a roadmap how to achieve the SDG 2, keeping 1.5. It's something we brought to COP. We are working, we are doing the projection to see what we can do to achieve the 2 goals. And if you think that the SDG 2 is linked to several goals, is something achievable. But what we need to do, we need to transform. We cannot do things in silo. We need to have a system approach where the way we produce, and when I say the way you produce, is not only the output, but how we use our natural resources, how we use our water, our soils, how we can transform, and how we can bring solutions to the table. The second part is how we process our food, how we consume our food. And it has been said that we need healthy diets, but we need healthy diets that bring us healthy consumption, but are environment friendly. And those are what we need to do. And how to do it. I think we have solutions. We have science. We have innovative solutions. But what is missing is that we work together, that we adapt, But when we adapt and mitigate, and I think agriculture is the only sector that allows us that adaptation bring co-benefits and vice versa. Mitigation brings also benefits. But what we need the farmers. We are talking about transforming, but who are daily transforming, working in our food system? The voice of the farmers, the voice of the politicians, our governments, what to have the idea and in mind that the transformation needs system change. And we need to work across sector. We need to have a system approach. We need to have all on board. We need science, we need innovation, we need the farmers. But what has been said here, to scale up, because we are working in a level that we are not transforming. We need investment. And this is also the missing part. The investment in agriculture is low, but is declining. And this is what we need. How we can bring sustainable solutions to financing, to investment that will support us to transform our agri-food system at the scale we want and we need. And I believe this is working together, political will, bringing the farmers at the center of the decision and of the implementation. And the Emirates Declaration will bring us all together. And I believe it will bring us, if we are able to mobilize all the investment, we have the promise here, we will be able to reach 2030, SDG 2, 1.5, and to see we succeed. Let's hope, is my hope, my wish.
I really, really appreciate your positive spirit, because some of us are already quite disillusioned about the processes, but collaboration might get us there. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know, only 1.7% of all climate financing goes to smallholder farmers. 1.7%. That's definitely too little. But let me turn to the opening statements of Dr. Harry Clark. He is sort of the scientific voice on our panel. He has spent his life on trying to reduce emissions, and particularly he's an expert on methane emissions, and he's the chief scientist of the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre. And we are very happy to have you with us today. You also represent the Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases, GRA. Is it turned on? Try again, maybe closer to your... Yeah,
Is it working okay?
It is wonderful.
Not close enough. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Just a little bit of background on the Global Research Alliance. We formed in late 2009, 2010, 24 countries coming together to say, how can we grow more food without growing greenhouse gas emissions? And at that point, unashamedly, it was more developed country focused, and it was about technology development. And I think, like everyone else, we've been on a pathway, and we now realize that, yes, research into new technologies is necessary, but it is not sufficient to tackle the problem. The problem is multidimensional and is going to take multidimensional approaches to solve it. And over time, I think that realization, it is a pathway to how we can get to low emissions agriculture. And we need to focus on all elements of that pathway. And some of the most effective levers that we can do, thinking about we need more food, we're going to have an increased demand for food of between 30 and 50%. It is about the implementation of known pathways. It is not about new technology development. In many situations, a lot of what we can do is around the better implementation of known technologies. We have enormous disparity in the efficiency of food production globally. And if we focus on those known practices about, what do we know? Feeding, breeding, better nutrition of crops and animals. They are not new, but what we've got to focus on is the implementation. And I would really like to echo my colleague at the side. At the end of the day, it's farmers who are going to be responsible for what happens. So how do we help them implement solutions? As researchers, we may be able to provide part of that solution, but ultimately it is farmers who are going to be asked to implement them. Just on livestock, there's close to 500 million people keep livestock. And it's the individual actions of those 500 million people that are going to have to implement that. But I don't think we're providing the right resources. It's beautiful. We can lay out very well modeled pathways and say, you know, each one of those bits of the pathway will reduce emissions so much. But how do we ensure they're implemented? Until they're implemented, they're just theoretical. And we need to think about the resource mobilization and the resource mobilization into implementation of pathways, not just about theoretical development of pathways. Now, I'm a researcher. I still think there's a role for research, and I think see that role changing. When we started in 2010, it was very much around how can we make better use of precious resources. There was very little resource going into research. We're now seeing there is more resource going to research, and it's particularly welcome as a philanthropic organizations putting more into research, but it is very technology focused. And I think that that's great, but we still have to think about that implementation pathway. And then an organization like the GRA has got a quite different role. I think we need to think about increasing capacity and capability. We've grown from 24 to 67 countries. The needs of the countries has changed, and we need to change as an organization into particular capacity, capability, and trying to help mobilize the resources for implementation. So I think we can get there. My worry is if we don't devote the right resources, the pathways to a low emissions future will remain theoretical.
So the key is implementation, and it's not by chance, ladies and gentlemen, that Elisabeth Nissamadala sits in the middle of this panel. She is not only a smallholder farmer, but a force of nature, pretty much. Those of you who don't know her yet, she has been a UN advisor to the SG Food Summit, like for the Secretary General himself, for the Food System Summit. You worked with IFAD, Elisabeth, with the Global Farmers Forum. You were in the interlinkage between the AU and the EU on collaboration in agriculture. Of course, also with FAO. You also already worked with Elisabeth. So you're sitting on many committees, boards, etc., 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 but you are a farmer at heart and someone who empowers many, many women around the globe. So please try to connect the dots. What is your opening statement?
Yeah, thank you so much. And you forgot to mention that I come here representing over 25 million smallholder farmers under the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, and of course over 1.2 billion under the World Farmers Organization. So it's very interesting listening from my friends from the panel, and especially organizations that are supporting and investing in food systems. But I think there's a big problem, and I always ask myself, how did we get here? Because everyone understands that the farmer faces the biggest brunt of climate change. And everyone here is saying that we need to invest in farmers. And everyone is saying that we need to bring farmers at the center. But things are not happening. Where is the problem? I think we need to dream again. We need to challenge ourselves, and we need to come up with real and concrete actions. What would be my dream and vision for Africa? I would want to see an Africa that is very productive, an Africa that is devoid of food shortages, an Africa that is devoid of imports. In the next 2 years, our import bill is going to be over 100 billion. I want to see an Africa that is ready to feed its own people and feed the rest of the world. I want to see an Africa that has thriving sectors, all the sectors, including the agriculture sector, but most importantly, an agriculture sector that is rewarding to the population, an agriculture sector that is rewarding in terms of in terms of variation, in terms of agro-processing, in terms of markets, both at regional and continental level. I'm happy to hear from the research from all these partners, but things are not working. And the reason they are not working is because the most important actors have been neglected. They are nowhere in the decision-making process. They are nowhere in terms of policies. They are nowhere in terms of deciding which resources go where. But when things don't work, we are the people who are being looked at as solutions. So what do we need to do? We need to invest in farmers and our organizations. Everyone is talking about scaling up. What are we going to scale up? It's what we are doing on the farms. So you need to make sure that you invest in us and we scale up what we are doing. She talked about the 7 harvests that we are remaining to 2030. Who is going to give you those harvests? It's the farmers. So I think the most important thing is to really see how we can support farmers, how we can scale all these innovations and the technologies from the research, how we can invest in the young people who are the present and the future generation. We need to see how we can invest in women to be able to motivate them to take care of land, to be able to engage in policies, to be able to hold our governments and our policymakers accountable. We need to invest in transformation of the agri-food systems and looking at them holistically in a value chain approach. We need to see how we can invest in data. And who is going to give you the realistic and real-time data? It's the farmers, and this is the data that is going to be able to help us in terms of making decisions on where we are supposed to invest. We need to create mutually benefiting partnerships with the private sector. There's a lot of money sitting in the private sector. I've been listening since 29th from the World Business Council, GA, and all these other private sector actors. They're putting a lot of money in regenerative agriculture. But who is accessing this money? All my members, none of my members have access to this money. So we really need to see how we can build those mutually benefiting partnerships and where we are treated as equal partners, as smallholder farmers. Because collectively, we are the biggest and largest private sector investor. Nobody is talking about the 368 millions that we invest annually in climate adaptation. Is it little money? I think not. And there is no any other private sector that has invested that in the agriculture sector. So that's the reason I'm saying that we need to be seen as equal partners. And you need to stop looking at us as people who are looking for handouts. We are not looking for handouts. We are private sector. We just need a leg up. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. And I'm very proud to say that 3 of the young agri-champions that the Ban Ki-moon Center is working with are currently here in the audience. And can I ask you actually, Carol, Richard, and Hafiz, to stand up? Because you are indeed our inspiration at the Ban Ki-moon Center. A round of applause for them. They have done a great job on teaching us. Thank you, guys. Thanks for standing up. They have taught us what are the demands that young agri-champions, young smallholder farmers actually have right now. And we have handed this paper already to the State Secretary and to many other of our partners, because these are the demands that come directly from the ground and directly from them. I do want to pick up some of your comments that you have made in your opening statement. But let me ask you first, does any of you want to react to the statement of someone else before I go to the question? Yeah, please do, go ahead.
Now, just to share one of the thoughts of Elizabeth, what to scale up. I think we have already things working in the field. We have farmers that are producing, but they are at low-level scale, by themselves sometimes. But how we can use what is working and make it at a bigger scale. And to me, this is also what we need, because we are not coming from scratch. We have things working, others not working. We have to learn from both sides and how we can bring it at a larger scale. We have the research. Maybe you don't need to invent the wheel. How we can build on the existing one and make it benefit for everyone. And this is maybe what I wanted to say, that for us to think that not to create or to restart. Maybe some areas we need, but we have a lot existing and successfully working. This is my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong,
Elizabeth, do you want to react? Please react.
You know, we've been friends for some time.
Yes.
I actually sit on the, I'm the vice chair of One Country, One Priority program by FAO. So FAO has been supporting us for some time as smallholder farmers, so we speak the same language. And I totally agree that we have working models. We have things that are really working in the field. And as World Farmers Organization, for example, under the Climate Makers, we have a compendium of over 100 stories from the field. As Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, we have also a profile of over 60 stories from the field with things that are really working. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And our experience has shown that it's also not a one-size-fits-all. So we really need to see how we can adapt some of those working models to the different environments. And also, these successes that we are seeing, these are just small successes. They're just islands. So we really need to see how we can put them to scale. But also to put them to scale, we need sufficient, and the key word is sufficient, investments in terms of, scaling these technologies and innovation. So we need sufficient resources. And we need to work with the research. We need science. Because we can't use yesterday's solutions to be able to, have solutions for today. Things are changing. So many technologies, innovations are coming on board. So we really need to see how we can bring science in terms of scaling up some of these innovations. Thank you.
And yet, Harry, yes, you said that there is this lapse between science and actually putting it to the ground. Please react.
I think there can be, but where I would like to concur with the other comments, if we look over time, we are reducing emissions per unit of food. It's been happening for 40 years. It's probably been happening longer. We just don't have data going back that far. So we're not starting from scratch. We're starting from a position where, in many ways, we know what to do. In some circumstances, we need to be learning from each other more. We need to understand what works better and what doesn't work. And then, actually, how can we speed that up? It's not new, it's speeding it up. And how do we work with communities? How do we listen to communities? How do we get that interaction between, say, the research community and the farming community and the implementation? Because I don't think we don't know what to do. We might have a problem scaling it, getting it quicker, getting it broader, and understanding the resource needs to be able to do that. So I think I concur with exactly what's been said.
And do you have an example, Harry? Because it's always easier to understand do you have an illustration maybe of where it worked in your realm, and maybe one where it just doesn't work for the years that you have spent on it?
Yeah, I would have to fall back on something I know.
Please.
Just to give you a very strong example, New Zealand was, used to have 84 million sheep and 2 million people, and probably the right ratio for some people. And back in 1990, emissions from sheep were the biggest emitter in the New Zealand economy. We are now producing the same amount of sheep meat with nearly 40% less emissions.
Wow.
Simply because we have changed the efficiency of production. We've reduced animal numbers, but we've increased the size and growth rate of each animal. And so we've increased our efficiency by 1% a year on year, and managed to produce slightly more food with 30% less emissions. Now that worked in our situation, and I think that kind of example we can find in many, many countries. But how do we make sure that those examples are learned from? How do we make sure that the resources are going in so that can be implemented? And in our case, it was done partly by market pull. in the sense that the market was demanding something different. We responded to the market, but one very big thing that happened, and this is a bit of a New Zealand hobby horse, was that we stopped subsidizing the agricultural sector. And what subsidies did, they encouraged us to keep more and more animals because we got a subsidy per animal. And then once they did that, once they removed those, the pathway forward was to make each animal more efficient. So the subsidy system distorted our production system. And we have to make sure that we've got the right enabling policies to make sure we move forward efficiently. And those policies will differ depending on the circumstances. For us as a food exporter, 95% of what we produce is exported. Very different situation for someone who's looking for food sovereignty and food security. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but that's, I think, a good example of we can move forward, but we need the right enabling environment as well as the right science and knowledge.
And I'm curious, Harry, I will probably turn back to you for what GRA has researched for particularly sub-Saharan context. So maybe you share a solution with us there, but you want to react probably.
Well, the last question especially you brought up about subsidies, it's a very sensitive topic, and as you said, one size will not fit everybody because we are having this discussion process within the European Union at the moment, looking at the new system after 27 and actually even looking to 34, knowing that there have to be adaptations in order to stimulate a form of agriculture that is more climate friendly. Now, I want to add one more thing, because that was brought up that, of course, the solutions of today will not be the answers of tomorrow or of yesterday. But what we also have learned, that sometimes a look back can also help, because what we are seeing sometimes, that there were technologies or ways to adapt to certain severe climates that we have forgotten because we have used other technologies to adapt. And now looking back, seeing what we have had and building from that, building up to new solutions is also something we're doing. And I'm sad that we're going up to 30% organic farming. I mean, we have been done research in this field for quite some time because they were not using artificial pesticides, for example. So we had to go into a research field looking for other solutions. So sometimes people have the idea that organic farming means that you're working like 100 years ago. No, it's not the case. But it's finding different solutions for the challenges we have today, but being more climate, and I also have to say, more nature-friendly, because the climate change is one thing, but we also see the question of biodiversity and soil fertility, and it all goes hand in hand, and we have to find solutions for all these challenges. And so sometimes it's good to maybe look 2 steps back so that we can go a new way.
It's interesting what you say. I'm tempted to give the floor to you, Maria Helena, because you have actually this big online platform on climate change knowledge. There is this climate change knowledge hub, and there is new knowledge exchange on solutions from the Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Work Program. And maybe you can comment on how does the information, the solutions that are out there, how are they disseminated? Does it really inform the action on the ground? And can the existing processes be improved with it?
Yes, FAO has the FAO Climate Change Knowledge Hub. It was supported by the German Federal Minister of Food and Agriculture. Thank you for that. And what this hub does, it gathers all the existing knowledge and resources on climate change, agriculture, and land use to improve decision making. All the users can access to this platform, and we have there the best available in terms of science, in terms of practices, in terms of innovation and technology. And what is not used as it should be. This moment, we are here in COP, we have a traffic, very heavy traffic, because several users are accessing to the information for better prepared to come here. But if you see throughout the year, it's not well used. Maybe we need to do more work, but if we have a problem of a pest, or if you want to improve efficiency in water use, you can go to the platform and you can have what happened around the world, and you can see what you can use in terms of science, what function in Chile that you can apply in Kenya. And this is, I think, what we have is an open data that everyone can use it. And it brings food security innovation, and it also be used for the Sharm el-Sheikh joint work on the implementation of climate action on agriculture and food security. Is all published online. But maybe just to complement, here in COP, we are also launching a compendium of best practices on adaptation. We know a lot about mitigation on agriculture, but we don't know much about adaptation. And as Elizabeth was saying, when we talk about the smallholders, we're talking about adaptation. And we believe what FAO can do is the fact that we covered all the world, and we have success stories that worked and didn't work. Because
Can you share one? Can you share a success story that worked?
Well, let me just tell you, we have a tool that it's called Vapor in water. It helps to know the soil, the moisture of the soil, and to tell you this is the variety you should plant here, or if your soil has enough moisture, you don't need to irrigate. And with this, we improve efficiency. In the same land, you can duplicate the production, just to give you an example. And it's a tool that is accessible to everyone.
Is it an app? Or how
it's an app.
It's an app.
It's an app.
And free to download for farmers.
Exactly.
So,
and you can use it. We have also what we call a soil doctor. It's a system that the farmers, they can know the soil, the composition of the soil, as us. We are missing some nutrients, and you just give the nutrients the soil needs. We can improve efficiency and also your financial resources, because you are not increase the fertilizer you will be using. And those are systems that improve efficiency. You can increase the production, increase the productivity, and reduce the investment we need. And this is really what FAO is creating, this open space to share knowledge, to share evidence, and to share best practices.
Great, thank you so much. I love success stories. So maybe, Elizabeth, you can also illustrate some?
I wanted to make a comment, especially on the indigenous knowledge. I'm happy my sister here mentioned about it, the need for indigenous knowledge, and for example, so the need to produce organic.
Speak up, because
the need for organic production. I want really here also my colleagues to understand that there is a cost that is needed for one to be able to transition. And as we look at the transitioning, and as we talk about adaptation and what the farmer needs to do, we also need to factor in incentives. Because agriculture is a business. And there has to be an economic sense for me, for example, why I should produce organically the same product, and I produce, let's say, 1 ton, when I can use conventional fertilizer to produce 10 tons from the same piece of land, and I'm getting the same amount of money. So if we don't provide incentives, and if we don't give food its true value, then also we still have a long way to transition. I know, for example, the EU has introduced, under your EU Green Deal, you've introduced so many regulations that are looking, towards organic production, agroecology, but also all these regulations that you're introducing, there has to be supported with support in terms of compliance. Because as we speak today, for example, Eastern Africa trades most with Europe. Europe is our greatest partner. But as we speak, there are few organizations, cooperatives and farmers associations that are able to trade because of the current market requirements. We are not able to meet the requirements. But with the additional requirements that are being introduced, for example, under the deforestation regulation, under the chemical sustainability strategy, where farmers are supposed to reduce fertilizer usage by over 20%, pesticides by over 50%, then these are additional market requirements that farmers are not well prepared to be able to meet. And yet, EU is also sourcing its raw materials from regions like Eastern Africa. So I think it's important that we also think through compliance and how we are going to support smallholder farmers to be able to comply with the additional requirements that are being introduced, but also create incentives that are going to motivate farmers to be able to produce in a more sustainable manner.
And Elizabeth, could you tell us how would you put that into practice? I agree with your points. What would be the Monday morning task? Would, let's say, investors sit here and you are appealing to them, do this? What would they need to do?
I think number one is for us to have the same level of information. I mean, how many of my African, for example, politicians, government representatives, or even the African Union understand what impact this EU Green Deal is going to cause for Africa? And we have an AU-EU partnership where EU and AU are discussing partnerships. But I've not seen this, for example, topic come up. And yet it is going to have a very big impact when it comes to trading between the two continents. On the other hand, we also have the Africa, promoting the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. But I think these are also some of the issues that are going again to come back. Because as EU sources for raw materials, then you also need to think about issues of traceability, because I don't see, unless you're saying you're going to lock out other farmers who are exporting to the EU, because if you're saying this is an EU Green Deal, it's sort of like protecting your market. But then how about other farmers who are exporting to your region? We need to comply. So my sister, we need resources to be able to comply to the regulations that you're introducing. Otherwise, it's going to have a very, very big direct impact on us as farmers.
Germany does a lot when it comes to bilateral and multilateral cooperation, and you support many, many initiatives, actually. But where do you see promising developments, and where do you see that more engagement is actually needed, without wanting to put you on the spot?
Well, first I would say there's always more cooperation needed, as I said, because we can only really go forward if we work together. And I will come to your points in a few moments, because actually we both are on the very same page in that perspective. Now, we are working, of course, with the FAST initiative, where we think, especially FAO, as a neutral facilitator. And we really support the work of FAO, CFS, because all these places where not just policymakers, but NGO and actually farmers come together to really discuss these issues on an international level are very important for us. We have several bilateral programs where we focus on research and innovation in agricultural field in the countries. We're especially focusing on African countries in that perspective, because our climate systems are quite different, so it's good to work with the research institutes there on their projects and to really work together on that. Now, I have to say something critical about the European perspective, because, and I mentioned that just a little bit, very often the perspective of even farmers there is that we want to export, but please do not import into Europe. That I hear quite often. Not said directly, but you can hear it by their demands. And I'm always telling them, you cannot ask for something for yourself you're not willing to give to others. That is not a true partnership. So that really needs a change of mind. So when it comes to the question of resources and information, yes, we have to take that more into account. I absolutely agree with you on that point. But I can also tell you, this is maybe not such a happy news, that will take quite a lot of effort to really change the minds of 27 countries. And they are very different farming systems, because when it comes to that decision, to that moment, they all look to their farm. And if they are living off export, especially to African countries, they will try to bring us to the idea how to enhance that. I'm quite frank when it comes to that situation, because that's what I'm telling them directly to their face. So really, if we want to build, if we want to have these high standards, we need to help others to comply to that. I'm a fan of high standards, but it should not be the closure of markets. But the standards should help facilitate change. But as you said, for that we need the resources as well.
The resource. So we actually need someone from the finance sector next time at the panel, because we're talking about finance and investment and the necessity for investment bridging the gap, the necessity for investment of scaling the various systems that already are there, the necessity of investments for smallholders, yes?
Very often...
Does it work?
Now it should be working. Very often when we talk about financing into the agricultural field, we talk about microfinancing. It's one part of it. We really have to talk about financing when it comes to startups. We really have to talk about the high technology field. So it's not just microfinancing. It's not just that. We really have to look at the greater picture to that.
Yeah. Harry, I'm looking at you. You were laughing when we were talking about the investments and the finance side of things. Does research tell us anything about how that could be done better and where it would be needed?
Research is not usually good around financial flows. The researchers are usually very introverted and look very much at their own research. But I do think there are some things that where we can think of if research is to have a role. And particularly I'm thinking from the Global Research Alliance perspective, we need to emphasize the role of capacity and capability building of research in all our countries. At the moment, the research is dominated by the developed world. It has got the most resources for research, but what we need to do is to build up the capacity for research that is locally appropriate with people who are knowledgeable in the systems in which that research has to be applied. And from our perspective, we are investing more into that. But it's no good investing money into researchers if there are then not jobs in the communities where those researchers are going back. And it's far too often we invest in researchers from developing countries and then they have careers in developed countries. What we need to be doing is having the right flows of investment into research in developing countries so that they can have careers in their own country and solve the problems locally. And I do worry at times that we cover gaps in the developed world's research by exploiting developing country talent. And I think we certainly, it's necessary that we work with the youth to actually increase their skills and capabilities and increase the total capacity to undertake relevant research. But unless we have the right financial flows into the research system, there are not the jobs for people. And also they're not the development of appropriately local solutions. So I think we need to have very joined up financial flows and joined up systems. We often, there's this lovely phrase about there's always a simple solution to a complex problem, and it's always wrong. And we have to understand the complexities of the system. And if we work in bits of the system without understanding the totality of the system, we will not solve the problem. I'm not sure that answers your question.
It is a complex answer, Harry, but this is exactly why we are here for. We hear from different vantage points. And actually the key question that is hovering over this panel to me is, what are the central elements that we need in the food system transition? What are the key levers? And indeed, you have mentioned several of them, and it's a complex question with complex answers. And I just want to illustrate, because our agri-champions have worked hard to formulate demands. And one of these demands was exactly what you spoke about now, Harry. It's the demand of the connection between policy, science, and practice. So that this segment needs more capacity, and it was your demand 3 out of the 3 that we had. And you were actually asking for building more even field schools that would connect this very linkage, and also to train smallholder farmer groups to showcase how to empower the policy, research and practice. So check out the demand paper. It's an easy read, it's wonderful, and it really comes from the ground. But so, let me give you another chance of a lightning round, because I want to hear from each and every one of you. What are the key levers to transform the food system? What are the key levers that we need now? And we heard a lot already. We heard, of course, participation of smallholders in negotiation. We heard the utilization of various platforms that are out there. We heard about the investment that needs to go to the grassroots. We did hear about cooperation on a multilateral but also bilateral scheme. But what would you say? What do you want the audience, before we go into a Q&A, to leave with as the lever for the food system transition, the transformation that we do need now? A lightning round, short answers. Who wants to start? Yes, Harry.
And I'll take a really, partisan research one. I think it's investment in education at all levels.
Okay.
Going right through.
You get applause from next door.
That's great. I have a loud voice, but I didn't think it had quite gone to there. But I think, to me, from a research perspective and an implementation perspective, it's about education, sharing of knowledge at all levels, from farmer education through to sharing farmer knowledge that we can learn from, right through to the research facilities. So I think education is a really key investment to facilitate movement through to a low emissions future.
Fascinating. We do a poll. Who agrees with that? What Harry just said, education is key. Only one hand up. You have many votes, so you can vote. Okay, cool. So, lots of agreement.
It's not sufficient on its own. It is a component of a solution.
Fair enough. I think we agree. Please.
Let me just build on what you just said on education, because something we didn't mention, but it's important. It was mentioned, is the consumers. We as consumers, what education we need to know what we should eat and what we should buy. Because if we don't buy certain food, they will not be produced.
True.
We are indirectly creating incentives to unsustainable production. And we have a responsibility also as consumers, as citizens. But another important point to me is the appropriate policies. Elizabeth spoke about incentives, but I think also we need rewarding. If we have a farmer that is producing sustainably, how we can pay higher to the produce? It's not yet there, but we need that. Because if I go and I don't incentive and I don't pay higher to a farmer, maybe he's having less productivity, but he's doing it right in the transition. How we can reward this? And this is something I listen from EU policies, no? The deforestation free. But some Costa Rica, they tell me, we have done it, we are doing it. We are not rewarding. Sometimes we are paying people to do the transition, but what we do to the ones already doing it?
Yeah.
I don't have the reply, but those are the things coming from my discussion. Or the farmers producing cocoa, but they are cutting trees to produce cocoa. They need to do this transition. How we can support them? It's important. It's not to say we are not importing, but what to do with those farmers? How to support them?
How to support them, how to be consumers that understand. Question again to the audience. Who of you believes that they are a consumer who really puts their money where their mouth is when it comes to food stuff? Okay, I see some. I don't know whether not so sure, but you hit the point, you hit the nerve here, because it means that not all of us, although we are in the space, we're in the bubble, not all of us necessarily are acting accordingly. And I know that Caroline would be very happy. Caroline is the wonderful lady in the yellow dress. She has organic food that she's producing in Kenya, and she would definitely vouch for that point, that we need to pay a little bit more to get it right, and that we need to be informed about that. So labeling is yet another point. And Harry, yes, I see you. Sorry, Elizabeth, one moment.
Again, can I just add one little bit? Half
sentence?
of the world's food is produced by smallholders, and it isn't traded. It is consumed locally. It's not in formal markets. So yes, consumers have a role. But the growing food production and emissions are coming from smallholder, where there's some is into the traded sector and quite a lot isn't. So we have to be careful around how far consumer preferences feed back into some of the production systems.
Okay, good point. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I want to re-emphasize two things. Number one is to listen to the farmers. Invest in the farmers' ideas and scale the farmers' ideas. That is number one. For over 25 years, we've been discussing climate change. But it's more than 25 years that we are seeing food systems as a solution to addressing climate change or the climate crisis. So meaning the farmers are very critical because everyone now is talking about investing in smallholder farmers. So we need to invest in smallholder farmers. Number two is making sure that resources get to where they are needed most, and it's on the farms. There are so many pledges and commitments that are being made. A lot of money is being talked about. But when you go to the ground where action happens, smallholder farmers are not accessing those resources. Only 0.3% of climate funding is accessed by the smallholder farmer. We need to get money where it matters most. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear State Secretary, the big levers, what are they?
Well, difficult question now that so much has already been said. Maybe something in general. I think one of the most important parts is that we understand that climate change, or better to say really the climate crisis and food security are so much interlinked. And if one worsens, the other will as well, and they will basically increase each other, because we see if there's a food crisis, we see other crises that will even enhance the climate crisis. So really understanding that building a sustainable food system is probably one of the most important parts when it comes to fighting climate change. And that means giving the means to the smallholder farmers, because they are the majority. And that's one point that was not mentioned, even though this panel would have made it quite easy. We have to focus on that part of the population that worldwide has a problem in accessing the resources, and that's women. And we really have to see women, and especially the smallholder farmers, the female farmers, as the most integral part of the solution. Because they have, unfortunately, usually more difficulties in gaining access to the finances and other resources. So if we can just get equality in that perspective, we will increase food production by 1/3 just by having equality. And that means that is one of the most important parts to really build resilient food systems.
Hands up, who agrees that the solutions presented by Elizabeth and the State Secretary are absolutely essential, including the empowerment of women? Thank you. Yes, we are, so to say, preaching to the choir. Wonderful. But with that, I do want to open the floor for questions that you might have to the distinguished panel. Please do introduce yourself. There are microphone, like there is one microphone with Claudia up here. Introduce yourself and then address the question to one of them or several of them. Feel free. Who wants to kickstart? Thank you. Lady in the back.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for a great discussion. I have a question for Mrs. Müller. Forgot to introduce myself. I'm Carmen. I work for DSS Plus, which is a sustainability consultancy, and I'm part of a number of AFOLO and food-related groups here at COP28. And from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of concern in the food community around the global stocktake text and the inclusion of AFOLO in it. So my question for Ms. or Mrs. Müller, I'm sorry, is what is Germany's position on it? And what do you hope to see in the global stocktake insofar as food is concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? Because we will collect some and then pass back to the panel to possibly answer. Please, yes.
Thank you. My name is Irina. I work for the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. We were on the same panel yesterday. So my question, well, I don't know if it's a question, but an open encouragement to all of you. So I think what food and agriculture system transformation obviously looks at creating healthier populations. And nutrition is a key part of this. And in this regard, I know the German government FAO was a strong partner of Sun, and many others here in the room have that in mind, but I haven't heard it yet in this discussion.
Interesting.
Right?
Health as a,
And so I think it would be great if we could talk about it a bit more, because again, 45% of child deaths globally are related to malnutrition. So I've heard a lot about increased food production. I like the comment from the State Secretary on organic farming, but I think it should be also, maybe as a recommendation, organic, nutritious food that we produce. And so this is, again, not really a question, even though I would love to hear the reflections from you guys on how we better bring out that connection when we talk about food and ag transformation. Thank you.
Excellent. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes. Caroline, yeah.
My name is Carol, one of the youth Ban Ki-moon's agri-champions. And this question is any of the panelists can answer. And I think, Elizabeth, maybe you can answer. But anybody can answer. So many people argue about it, and it's simple. Do you believe organic farming can feed the world?
Oh, great. Organic farming feeding the world, the health question and the negotiation question. Can I pass back to the panelists? Who is willing to answer, to respond? Anyone? Yeah, thank you.
Well, I can start with the negotiation. I have to say that we always said that we want a very ambitious text when it comes to that, so maybe that answers it in a diplomatic way.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
Now, to this question about the nutritious food, I tried to say that a little bit in my statement, saying the right to adequate food, because that's about it. Because we're not only talking about hunger, but we're really talking about malnutrition, especially children. So yes, but that again means that we have to look at the food systems, and the question is, what are people eating? And what we have seen, especially in the recent years, that we also have a growing number, for example, of obese children still not really getting the right nutrition, because it is promoted to eat something that makes them full, quick, but it's not the local food, it's not what is in the systems there. And if we really want to build resilient systems, this is again, and then organic farming comes into play, focusing on what is there regionally, what is going on, what fits the system in the area. And therefore, one solution is not there for everybody. And can organic farming feed the world? I get the question also from my farmers, because usually they say, no, you can't. Now, when I say that we go up to 30%, that means 70% are still conventional. The goal should be that also conventional farming to be more climate and nature friendly. So it's not just about everybody being organic, but it is to find the right solutions for the place you're in. And I know a lot of, especially dairy farmers, if I look in my area, we have some of them. If I look at how they have the cattle, that's basically organic farming. The only thing they don't do is the fodder. They buy them and they would like to buy from wherever else. So they say, well, they are not organic, but the animal husbandry in itself, and they say it's very efficient for them. So you will have a mixture to that. And really the question is, what is the best solution in your area, but taking into account the natural resources? Because we really have to think about that as well. As you said before, I mean, you are living off of them. So this is key to your production, and we have to think long-term, especially when it comes to agriculture. Short-term, yeah, you will get good revenues in a short period of time, but in the long run, you will be put out of business. So that would be my answer to that.
Anyone? Yes, please. React.
Okay, let me start by the colleague from SUN. As you know, FAO is a good partner of SUN, and we talk always about food security and nutrition. The food needs to be nutritious, and we talk about healthy diets, healthy and sustainable diets. And we just launched a study on the hidden cost of food, and we spend every year 10 trillion US dollars because we don't have healthy diets. And not having healthy diets, it brings what we call non-communicable diseases, diabetics, hypertension, and they are costs coming from the government budget. just to show how it's important in the transformation of agri-food system that nutrition, healthy diets, it's included. Coming back to your question, I think we should think about all the tools and the solutions we have. And we talk about approaches, sustainable approach, where we have agroecology, regenerative agriculture, we have agroforestry that can allow us to produce and increase the systems and at the same time protect nature. And those are also systems that they can bring production and productivity. But I used to say that it should be context specific. The countries, the farmer, they should choose what approach they want and what they prefer. We in FAO, we offer a toolbox of all the solutions, and it's up to the countries and the farmers to choose and to have the appropriate policies and legislation to protect the production and the farmers.
Thank you. Can organic farming feed the world? Do you have comments on that one, or Elizabeth, and comment to something else that was mentioned?
I think my two sisters have really ably responded to the concerns. And for me, the key words, especially my sister who raised the issue of nutrition, it's very important that as we think through food security, we also think and prioritize the aspect of nutrition, especially on health diets and nutritious diets. But also, we should also look at the sustainability of those diets. And then on the issue of organic, whether it can feed the world, and again, I mean, Helena has really explained that where we have to give different priorities, but the key words here is producing in a way that really respects nature, people, and the planet, and which is very sustainable. Of course, there's so many interventions that we are promoting, and she pointed out some of them. For example, agroecology, which we are promoting as a farmer organization. But as we promote agroecology, we also need to think through how we can increase food production. So really, farmers have different choices to make. I cannot give a concrete response on whether agroecology can feed the world, but we need to also look at the different categories of people, because as our economic status, for example, improve, then we more think of transitioning to health and nutritious diets. So I think it's also important that we look at the two different production mechanisms, but most importantly, think of producing in sustainable ways that are respectful to nature and the planet. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't know, Harry, do you want to react, or shall we collect the next round of questions? Because we have time for one more round, so think if you want to ask something.
Just very quickly, I'd certainly like to reinforce the issue about what we really need to look to is nutritious diets. And to get the diet correct, we need the right amount of food, we need those foods to be nutritious, and we need to make wise nutritional choices. There's no shortage of nutritional foods in developed world, but there's also no shortage of obesity because the diets are not healthy. So I think it comes back to the future is about healthy diets, and there are many elements to getting a healthy diet. When it comes to the organic side, I think we have to be not dogmatic about food security. We need to work far more sustainably, but whether that means we need to be dogmatic that it's organic production, I don't know, because I think the evidence so far would point to, certainly where there's been studies, that organic production does result in a drop of production. That doesn't mean we can't develop methods that don't, but we have to be very careful that land is a scarce resource and that we need to expand food production without going into more land. So I think we need to farm more sustainably, but whether that is being dogmatic about organic, I think is a different issue.
Interesting. So no clear-cut answer, but I see one more question.
Diversification, it's important.
Yeah, diversification. There is one more question. Please.
Yes, I'm a My name's Stuart McAlpine. I'm a farmer from Western Australia, and I've probably already seen climate and evapotranspiration reduce my crop yields by 30%,
Yep.
which is quite significant, and we know the age of farmers is increasing. But I want to actually say that now when I farm, I think I want to bring microbiome into the conversation, because I think it is the missing link. And so if I farm the microbiome now as a farmer, because if we farm the microbiome, we improve our soils, we improve our plants, our animals, and in turn the transference of that microbiome through to us. So I think that is the real key to healthy food, healthy ecosystems, healthy animals, and a healthy planet.
Thank you for the comment. Any other comment, Mira? Yes, up here front row, and then there is a lady in a beautiful flowery blazer.
Thank you. So I'm Mira Shah, and I've just joined the Ban Ki-moon Center, so I'm not going to hog the stage, but I have a comment, I think, in regards to the organic food and what you said about, not being dogmatic. I'm not dogmatic about it either, but I think there is another conversation that hasn't quite happened here, which is around post-harvest losses. If we are going to go down the organic farming route, if we are able to do more on the post-harvest losses, then it might not be such a problem, in a sense, to feed the world. In other words, maybe with reduced production or productivity, combined with better solutions for post-harvest losses, we can perhaps do a bit more of that. But I think this is something that we need to speak a little bit more about, and has a lot of opportunity to address some of these challenges that we've spoken about. So I leave it at that.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks. Claire McConnell with the International Institute for Sustainable Development. I would like to maybe just come back briefly to the negotiations point, and thank you to the State Secretary for her answer that Germany wants a really ambitious text. Yesterday at the Heads of Delegation meeting, when the draft text that is currently on the table was reviewed, not one party spoke up about the emission of food systems in the current draft text, not even any of the signatories of the Emirates Declaration made at the very start of COP. So I'd just be interested to hear a little bit more about how Germany is pushing for an ambitious outcome, and how Germany plans to use its voice, particularly within the EU, to push for the inclusion of food systems in the GST text. Thank you.
Thank you. Tricky one to answer, as State Secretary is not part of the negotiation. Please beware. I saw another question. Yes, Hafiz, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Hafiz, one of the Ban Ki-moon Center Agri-Champions. My question is related to inclusive agribusiness value chains, because if we are looking at sustainability and securing the global food supply, then we need to ensure that we are preparing for our aging farm population. What has been, I'm curious to hear about your experiences in terms of securing that global food supply in the context of youth and women inclusion, especially in developed countries, especially in Europe, but also related to organic farming. I'm curious about the policy conversation in the EU, because if we are talking about organic farming, and then conversations around glyphosate is still on the table, what signals are we sending to the whole world? I'm curious to hear about comments around it.
Great, so we got a couple of incentives. We have just about 10 minutes left, not quite, but I'd be happy to hear your responses or your thoughts on what you have just heard in the audience, without wanting to put you on the spot, because I do know, it's okay, you're used.
I'll start with the one I cannot answer, because I just arrived this morning, so I have not gotten the update on that issue at the moment. So I'm sorry, I cannot be more specific right now. Secondly, and what Hafiz was just saying, we have that discussion within the European Union, because we have the organic farming, and of course we are promoting that farmers do more work to preserve the nature. So, for example, not using all their lands, implementing more biodiversity measures, and that they get, a subsidy for. Now, we are saying at the moment, it is not really feasible for them at the moment, we are seeing, so that's something we're discussing with looking onto 27, how to make it more feasible. And it's actually that we as the German government and our Farmers Association, we are on the very same page for that, saying that, I mean, this is public money, and public money should be spent in a way that all of the public profits. And all of the public profits when we invest in biodiversity, when we invest in climate protection and soil protection. But this is something we have to discuss with 26 other partners, with different structures. So I will not make a bet on what will be the new system in 27. That really is a difficult question. And yeah, and as you said, with glyphosate, Germany, we abstained. Well, it's a question within our government, but we did not say yes to it. And I can say that from our ministry and also the Ministry of Environment, we were not in favor of it, as a matter of fact. We will now see how we can control the usage of it in a way we have done it before, because otherwise we just see that it is used in a way that is not sustainable. Not by everyone, and I know a lot of farmers know that there have been mistakes made in the past, but we have to move forward. And yes, it's a very mixed signal when it comes to it. I want to comment also going very quickly on the food losses, because this is really a question we really have not touched upon, but it is a big question because one third of the food production is lost. And I would add to that the question of between food for us and fodder for animals, because a lot of the agricultural land is used for that as well. And the question is how we can build sustainable systems that we will not have a competition between these two usages. That is also a question, could be completely different round, or another round on that, because that also, when we talk about sustainable food systems, we really have to look at the one scarce source we have, and that's the soil, and how to use that efficient, and how to use that also in a sustainable way. And that really brings that question up as well.
Post-harvest losses, yeah. Elizabeth.
It's off.
Yes, now.
Yes, it's on. Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on the post-harvest loss. I think it's very important that we invest in post-harvest management. Because in most of the African countries, we have high rates of post-harvest losses, in some countries as high as almost 40%. So if we can work around that, we can save more on the loss and the food waste. But also, not only concentrating on the post-harvest losses, but also starting from the production. Because if a farmer plants, for example, 5 kilos of seed in an area where they were supposed to plant 2 kilos, that is already a waste and a loss that the farmer is making. So it has to be across the entire value chain. And then I wanted to make a comment on inclusivity and how we are managing that, especially in our organizations. From EF, where I come from, the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, issues of youth are very central, and they are cross-cutting areas of our strategic plan. Actually, we are the first regional farmer organization to have a youth president through a democratic process. And we have many programs supporting youth. We've implemented a program with IFAD on rural youth access to financing, where we've supported over 12,000 youth. We've trained over 760 youth organizations. Together with FAO, we've created the AYA platform, the Africa Youth in Agribusiness platform, where youth are able to learn from each other, to exchange ideas and also opportunities on the platform. Thank you.
And how can youth actually go there? Like, is it online?
It's open. It's online. It's open, so you can just you can just go online and become a member of the platform. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that.
Maybe some comments. Indeed, we have the two sides, the food loss and the food waste, where the food loss is main in developing countries. In developed countries, the food loss is very, very low. In developing countries, yes, if we invest, we can have more production, and we see if you lose or we waste food, is all use in the production of the food that is waste, no? The land, the water, the emissions, the greenhouse gas emission, that if you take it zero or close to zero, we can increase and have more production. And the same with food waste. If it's enough to feed the world, our FAO study said not. It can increase, but it's not enough. But probably further studies can show different results. The question about food system in the negotiations, indeed is very regrettably that we reach this situation. We in FAO we have been doing as much as we can, outreaching. We have a training 1 month ago with the negotiators, agri-negotiators, to talk about the importance of bringing the discussion to the negotiation. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, meaning that we need to do much work. We need to continue working together. We cannot give up. And I think we have work ahead of us. It's unfortunate that we only postpone and we don't solve the problem, bringing it to the negotiation and the discussion. But just to assure you that FAO, we are committed to work on this agenda. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Harry, no more comment? Then, ladies and gentlemen, this leads us to the end of this very interesting and I think interactive discussion. Big thanks with a round of applause to the panelists. And big thanks to you, dear audience. Give me a last show of hands. Who has learned something today that they didn't yet know before from these wonderful speakers? Wonderful. So with that in mind, have a great COP28, and hopefully we can reconvene with even brighter stories, even better solutions, and a food system that eventually will be transformed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.